Senator, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Greta.
Senator, I want to start first with drones. Obviously, everybody in the country is talking about it. Our government says, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's hobbyists. Yet all the discussion, our government is behind closed doors. It's not out in the open. So what's the story on these drones?
Well, that's a good question, Greta. I think that, and that's where we need more transparency out of the administration. They're downplaying it. And if they're downplaying it, why aren't they being more transparent about what's happening in the drone world? I think the American people are understandably frustrated and understandably distrustful of the information that they're getting from the administration. But, this is an issue that is very much on the minds of Americans, particularly in areas around the country where we've seen a lot of the drone traffic. And I think the administration has to come up with a better answer. Certainly next year, under President Trump and his team, they will be more transparent with the American people, and issues like this hopefully get resolved and don't create all the skepticism, the cynicism, and frankly the fear that I think a lot of people across the country are feeling about this.
You mentioned the incoming president. You will be taking the helm in charge of the United States Senate. President Trump has said that there'll be mass deportations. Is there legislation that you intend to pass to facilitate that? Have you spoken to the president about that?
Well, we've had a number of conversations with the president and his team about how best to ensure that he has the tools and the resources available to him to secure the border and to deal with the more than 10 million people who have come into the country illegally under the Biden administration. That involves a lot of things, some of which includes deportations. Clearly, it involves physical structures, technological structures at the border. It means more personnel, more law enforcement personnel, more ICE, more Border Patrol. There are a whole range of things the president's going to need at his disposal in order to do the job he needs to do to get the border, one, secure going forward, but also to deal with what has been a huge influx of people in this country. And as you know, a lot of people who have been guilty of crimes, we've got people on the terrorist watch list have gotten into the United States, or we know at least a lot of them have been apprehended, and we assume a lot of them have gotten through that weren't caught. So those are all issues that the American people are concerned about, and President Trump, when he takes office, will do something about, and we will work very closely with him to see that he has the resources and everything at his disposal to implement his agenda, which starts with taking care of our border in this country.
Well, with the transition of any administration, you can't just flip a switch, because as the new president comes in, he needs a cabinet. There have got to be confirmation hearings in the Senate. There are some controversial candidates, or at least some people object to them. How fast do you think these hearings will get started, and how soon do you think that the president will have a cabinet?
I met with all the chairmen today, Senate Republican, the chairs, that will take their positions on January 3rd when the new Senate is sworn in, to ensure that they're getting everything they need from the administration in terms of the paperwork, the background, so they can process these noms and then get the hearing scheduled early in January so that the nominees can be reported to the floor as soon as the president takes office and hopefully considered on the floor. Clearly the national security nominees probably take precedence, but we want to get as many of them across the floor as quickly as we can, and that process is underway, starting with the committees of jurisdiction and the paperwork that's associated with getting these nominees through the process as quickly as possible. I think right now, I feel good about where we are. Obviously, it's going to take some time once we get seated in January, but we have 2 weeks before the president takes office January 20th, and we're going to use that time to do the committee hearings and a lot of the things that the Senate has to do as part of our role as advice and consent.
One of the things that came up in the last year or two, and actually I'm opposed to this, but the Democrats raised, in fact, Senator Markey, Warren, Wyden, Whitehouse, and even Senator Klobuchar are in favor of it, and that is expanding the Supreme Court beyond 9. Now the Republicans take control of the Senate. Is there any chance that the Supreme Court will be expanded beyond 9? I know why the Democrats wanted to do it when they had power. Now you're going to have power. Is there any chance that there will be an effort to expand the Supreme Court?
No chance. Not on our watch. That's not going to happen. That's obviously an issue, and that's why the Democrats wanted to get rid of the filibuster. One of many reasons. They wanted to add Puerto Rico and D.C. as states. They wanted to expand the Supreme Court. They wanted to nationalize our elections. They had a whole long list of things. We call it the list of horribles that they wanted to do if they could get rid of the Senate filibuster. But no, that's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that the Supreme Court is at the number, which is 9, and we're obviously, as we have an opportunity to get judges replaced, district court judges, circuit court judges, et cetera, going to move very quickly to get people installed in those positions that the president and his team want to see in those important positions. But no, the Supreme Court, I assure you, on our watch, will stay where it is.
All right, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, under his watch, abolished the filibuster as it related to federal judges, and then the Republicans a few years later abolished it as it related to the Supreme Court. Is there any chance under your watch that you'll go back to the days when there was filibuster for the Supreme Court and for federal judges?
I think that genie is out of the bottle, Greta. When the Democrats did that, they sort of blew it up for district and circuit, and then, of course, we extended it to the Supremes. I don't expect that to change. There's some folks who, when you think about where we are today relative to where we were 2 decades ago in terms of the courts, it has changed a lot. But I think right now everybody has accepted the new norm, and we've moved on. We want to make sure that we're getting good people in those positions, people who are constitutionalists, who understand what the rule, what the role of judges is in our democracy, and are constitutionalists and people who respect the rule of law. That's what we're going to be looking for. And but the idea that we would go back to the 60-vote threshold for judges is not going to happen.
President-elect Trump has selected Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to be basically efficiency experts, DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Do they have any authority? Because we've gone through this before. In the 1980s, President Reagan had the Grace Commission. But will there be any authority to actually make the necessary cuts to sort of tighten our belt to make the government more efficient?
Well, I hope they can find ways to make cuts. This is a long overdue process, by the way. We need to scrub our government, our federal agencies, to find places where we can achieve savings and do things a lot more efficiently and effectively. So I totally applaud what's being done. Your question about what it takes to get things done, I think there are some things that they can probably do through the president, through executive action, that they have authority to do, but they will need some help from Congress, and we want to be good partners in that. If they need authorities in order to go in and do some of the things, and certainly with respect to certain programs, since Congress has the power of the purse, they're probably going to need some authority or direction from Congress. We want to provide that so that they can do the best job possible of getting this government down, right-sizing it, ensuring that we don't have excess bureaucracy and excess spending, and getting power out of Washington, control out of Washington, money out of Washington, and back in the states and local governments and in the hands of the American people, where frankly it should be. So it's something we're supportive of, and we're going to do everything we can to help them have success in what they're trying to accomplish when it comes to cutting the size of government and making it more efficient.
Would you be in favor of moving some of the agencies out of Washington, sort of to spread the wealth in terms of jobs, and also to have some of these agencies maybe have some, for instance, Interior might be more interested in issues out west than they are necessarily inside the Beltway here in Washington. But what about moving some of these agencies out of Washington?
I'm supportive of that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't know, for example, why the Department of Homeland Security couldn't be down on the border, which is where their job is, or Department of Agriculture in the state of South Dakota, or Interior, as you said, in the western states, where they're really closer to the issues that they're supposed to have jurisdiction over and have authority over. And it would keep them closer to the people. And unfortunately, what happens in bureaucracy is people get in this bubble out here and kind of divorce from reality and from the real world. And I think getting agencies closer to the people, closer to the issues, makes all the sense in the world. And if there's a way that could be achieved, I'm certainly open to it. And one of the reasons I think it makes sense, especially now, is the fact that there are so few people who are actually showing up in their offices in Washington. I mean, you look at the federal government right now, there was a study out that was reported on by the New York Times recently that said only 6% of the federal workforce is back to work full time, if you can imagine that. And so I think this is an opportunity, like I said, a long overdue opportunity to take a look at the federal government, figure out what we really need and how can we best respond to the American people in a way that restores their confidence and their trust in their leaders. And I think part of it is getting it closer to the people and where they're actually dealing with the problems that folks are dealing with in their everyday lives.
All right, let me peel back the curtain on one thing. Right now, everyone's paying attention to the transition of the federal government, but you actually have a transition in the U.S. Senate. Even you're changing offices and you're changing jobs. I mean, what's the transition like? I mean, American people don't realize that you've got a physical transition of your own.
Right, we do. We've got the first transition in leadership here in the Senate, at least on the Republican side, in 18 years. So it's underway. There's a lot of, moving of offices and furniture and staff, et cetera, which will be easier once we're out of here. And Congress is supposed to finish up its work for this session of Congress by the end of the week, and if that happens, then there'll be a lot of moving going on between the 20th in December and January 3rd, which is when the new Senate is sworn in. But it is it's a process, and one that hasn't been done in a while, so we're learning as we go, but we'll be up and running when January 3rd hits, ready to go to work for the American people.
And I've actually seen the transitions when they're like the halls are full of boxes, furniture is being moved. It's quite an ordeal when there's. Anyway, Senator, thank you, sir. I hope you come back in the new year.
Well, there's a lot of new
senators
coming in. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Senator,
Sounds
thank
good.
you, sir.
Thanks, Greta. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Take care.